Hey folks, how you guys doing? My name is Mark. This is Why I Hate the World. What's happening? Hey, I almost started on time today. That's cool. Only 6 minutes late. Anyway, thank you. I see there's a couple of people out there watching. Thank you guys for joining. And this is our first stream of the new year. So, Happy New Year, everybody. Happy 2021. And here's hoping that this year turns out to be much better than 2020. The utter horror show that 2020 turned out to be. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump right down into it. But before we start, let's take a look at what we've been working on here lately. So this is, I don't know, I kind of like how this is looking. You know, it's got sort of a weird wall of flesh kind of thing going. You know, monsters and teeth and tentacles and all that stuff. And as I've said in the past, this kind of thing isn't really challenging for me, but, you know, when it turns out good, it looks good, right? So why don't we continue on with this for at least the next couple of streams, and we'll just work on that for a bit. So, what are we going to talk about? Well, first thing, I think, I want to start off with this Christmas Day bomber thing. So, the Nashville Bomber, right? Which, yeah, I'm pretty sure everybody out there, you know the story behind this guy. He was a kind of looks like sort of a loner type person, you know, older guy, 63, I think they said he was. He was in IT, and it's starting to look like you know, the whole thing was a very elaborate suicide kind of thing, right? But there seems to be a little more to it than that, than what, you know, we've been, you know, most people when they see that, oh, it's a suicide, and they just sort of dismiss it, whatever. But one thing I want to kind of point out is that right when it happened, right, and I think this is a good example, the Nashville Bomber, the Nashville Christmas Day Bomber is a good example of what happens when, first off, when you live in a society like ours, which is very polarized, right? Dynacat, hey, APX, really? Oh, well, you know, I only get like, you know, 25 views on my stream anyway, so whatever. Not a big deal. Maybe I should move it to a different time, you think? I don't know. Anyway, thank you, Dynacat, for joining. Yeah, you know, the reason why I chose to do this at like in the daytime on, you know, Sunday or whatever is because that way people on the East Coast, you know, it's like they're 3 hours ahead of me, so that way they'll like, you know, be able to tune in if they wanted to. You know what I mean? Like, because when I stream at night here, then that means it's like the middle of the night over there, and so I figured, hey, maybe more people will watch if I'm more available. But yeah, it looks like I'm not the only person to have that idea. So APX, okay, well, maybe I should move to a different time, I guess. Who knows? Anyway, I'm not going to worry about it. Too late now. But yeah, I mean, seriously though, I seriously, like, if I get like 25 views on a stream, like, then I'm happy. You know what I mean? So I don't think APX has much to worry about from me competing with them. But anyway, thank you for the heads up, though. So yeah, I'm going to move on. I want to talk a little bit about this, you know, Nashville bombing, right? There was a little bit going on there, but I think it, like I was saying, it's a good example of what happens when you live in a polarized society, right? Because when that happened, immediately the first thing that happens whenever you get some kind of large public event, you know, where people could potentially be killed, whether it's a mass shooting or whether it's a bombing like this, or, you know, you hear in the news somebody runs someone over at a protest, whatever. Immediately, what happens is that everybody starts pointing fingers at each other, and, you know, oh, this guy's a, you know, insane conservative wacko, and oh, this guy's a liberal, the BLM guys are starting to like kill people, blah 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 blah. BLM has graduated to bombing. That's a thing that I heard from the conservatives, right? And and admittedly myself, when I first saw this, that my first thought was insane right wingers, getting ready to actually make the revolution a real thing, right? And I don't think I was unjustified in that assumption, right? Because we've had for the last, 6 months people screaming about how if Trump lost, they were going to revolt, you know. I mean, that was a thing even back in 2016 when, when it looked like Trump was going to lose that election. All of his people were screaming about how there was going to be violence if he didn't win, right? And especially this time, people are, I'm not accepting the election, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's not a very, it's not a, leap to assume that these people would turn violent. I mean, the weekend before this, we just saw a bunch of Proud Boys go out and start stabbing people and shit in D.C. More, more on that later. So no, I don't think I was unjustified in assuming my gut reaction being that this was an insane right wing person, right? Um, and it kind of turns out, so that's the first thing that happens. People start flinging mud. They make founded assumptions because really, in the beginning, whenever there's an event like this, we really don't know what's going on. All we really have is to base on, the only thing we really have to base opinions on is what you hear in the news, right? And whenever there's this type of event, the news doesn't really know what's going on either for a little while. It takes a couple of days. You know what I mean? Like, I think this was a reason why, like, a lot of the 9/11 conspiracy theories got legs, right? Because in the beginning, after 9/11, for a little while, nobody knew what was going on. So you got conflicting news reports, saying different things. Oh, this tower got pulled. Tower 7 got pulled, and all this other crap. And it was really these guys, Muhammad Atta. No, it was really these other guys. Blah blah blah. And there's conflicting news stories, right? And this is a thing that conspiracy theorists use when they go back and they review news footage of an event. Like using 9/11 as an example, right? They'll go and they'll point to conflicting news stories and they'll say that's evidence that the mainstream media was in on it from the very beginning. It's like, oh, they're telling us lies. It's like, no, they're not telling you lies. They don't really have all the facts yet. So, a newspaper or a network or whatever, they broadcast the news as it comes to them, right? And that's why it may not be accurate at first, because this is what they're getting, Another example of this is during the Columbine shooting, way back in the 90s, right? There were reports that there were more than two shooters, right? In the very beginning, like in the first like couple of hours or so after that first happened, there were like people saying that there was another guy running around in there in camos and shit like that. Turned out that wasn't a shooter, you know. And then people will point to those reports saying, see, the media's covering stuff up. And it's like, no, they're not covering stuff up. They were just incorrect, because stuff comes around and it's like, they're reporting on things that haven't been vetted yet. Because like early in the process, especially when you have like a 24-hour news cycle where you always got to have more news and shit in order to like, you know, fill up that airtime, right? A lot of the times it's like stuff gets reported that isn't exactly true, and then they'll either retract it or else that part of the story just doesn't go anywhere. And it takes a little while for an actual official, for a narrative to get crafted. Like, this is what actually really happened, right? Hey, Booyah and Madame, thank you for joining. Happy New Year. So, anyway, excuse me. Going back to this Nashville bombing thing, right? That's kind of what happened in the beginning. In the very beginning, nobody knew shit about anything about what was going on. Nobody knew about the guy. And for the first day or so, you just had people online, people on Twitter, people on Facebook, blah, 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 throwing blame back and forth, about um, who did what and who was responsible and what the political, leanings of the suspect were without any kind of, any kind of proof about anything whatsoever. So, I want to kind of go over a little bit of that. I have these pictures that I got here. Let me just sort of open these guys up. Okay, let me turn on my left monitor here. Go over to here, just to kind of, and this is just, to kind of show us that, it's not good to jump to conclusions. Wrong monitor. Right monitor is the one I want. I can tell left from right. This is really just me to kind of show us all that it's not a good idea for us to jump to conclusions, when shit like this happens, right? This is one that I got off of YouTube. This is a YouTube comment from Ronnie Rebel. It's Antifa BLM. They're trying to draw in cops. The only group of local terrorists that want to harm cops. So something to keep in mind here is that BLM is not in the habit of bombing people, at all. BLM has really not murdered anyone. I mean, unless you count Michael Rienal, right? He's the probably the only shooter who's ever even remotely like connected to BLM or Antifa. And even that guy said that he wasn't really part of any official organization, right? That was just his ideology. So it's very rare for Antifa, for BLM to actually murder someone. They'll often get into fights with people, that kind of thing, right? But they won't straight up murder people, right? So let me just kind of move this into the middle so that doesn't look so horrible. All right. So yeah, really, is there a reason to assume that BLM would just graduate into just to like, from protests and maybe like, property damage to just straight up fucking bombings? No, it's completely unfounded. So here's let's see, what else do I got here? This one. Okay, this is where they're throwing blame back and forth. So this is also from the same video. Proud girly boys got their skirts all in a ruffle, blaming the Proud Boys. Second guy, yeah, FBI blaming Trump somehow. Nobody blamed Trump. I don't understand that shit. Third person, more like basement dwelling Antifa or Antifa. So yeah, it goes back and forth. You know what I mean? It's not just, you know, it wasn't just people blaming BLM or people blaming, the right-wing Proud Boys or whatever. It's like everybody immediately made these assumptions, you know. And that's kind of a disturbing sign. It's a sign that we live in a society where people don't trust each other anymore. And they're assuming that the other side is like starting to radicalize even more than they really are. Which, now, like I said before, I mean, we just had a weekend where, like, a bunch of Proud Boys went and stabbed people and shit like that. So it's like, yeah, this trust isn't really unfounded, but it's dangerous nonetheless. You know what I mean? Like, it really is not a good thing for our society to automatically assume that an act of violence has political, meanings behind it. When in real life, I mean, and more on what the guy actually was all about. What was his name? I haven't written down the actual dude that perpetrated the bombing, and it was more of like a suicide kind of thing, right? But still, that it doesn't help, when people just make these assumptions about shit without any proof about it, and it's a warning to, I guess, to everybody. It's like, you really don't assume things without any actual proof, because that's what happens when you do that. When you assume things without any proof, then you start to kind of build your own sort of narrative in your head, and that's really how conspiracy theories take root. You know what I mean? And before you know it, you're just assuming all of this shit without any proof, and then, the actual people that think differently than you are not just normal people, but they're actually Satan worshiping child molesters or some shit. And it's like, gotta make sure we don't fall into that trap, is what I'm trying to say. Let's see. Let's move on here. Okay, this one is actually from, this is, yeah, I think this is from Reddit. Okay. To kind of show you this, now I wanted to quote this guy, right? Because it's a good example of what happens when what I just described, occurs. When you make assumptions, right, and without any proof to back it up. And this is also another example of how any event that happens in the news just gets folded into the wider conspiracy theory narrative. You know, you ever notice that shit? You ever notice how like the QAnon people, especially QAnon, and then also like the people who believe in the like NWO and all of that stuff and the moonlight, like all of this shit, like whenever there's an item of something that happens in the news, whenever there's an event of something significant, and it doesn't matter what it is, they always fold that into their conspiracy theory, right? They always sort of like take that and say they attribute meanings to it where they don't have any actual proof of anything, right? And it becomes just another part of the mythology. And I think this comment here is an actually a pretty good example. So I'm gonna go ahead and just read this. Okay. So this is from a guy named Joe Halo Gabinero, right, on YouTube here, right. Could this be a possible reason? Yeah, talking about the Nashville bombing. AT&T got a contract to do forensic audit on Dominion voting machines, and those machines were being moved to Nashville this past week. Okay. No, they weren't, number one. But we'll go, all right, let me just read it first, and then I'll go through this point by point. All right. The former owner of the AT&T building in Nashville, William Kennard, is a board member for Cerebus Capital Management and AT&T, ... He was also Bill Clinton's FCC chair and Obama's ambassador to the EU. Dominion Voting is owned by Cerebus Capital Management. Cerebus is run by Staple Street execs. Joe Biden's brother-in-law, Stephen Ovens, is a co-founder of Staple Street execs, along with William Kennard, mentioned above. Supercomputer in Tennessee was connected to the AT&T internet in Nashville yesterday evening. The Cumberland River coding system was compromised due to internet outage and supercomputer fried. If you don't know, Kraken is a reference to supercomputer former prosecutor Sidney Powell has been talking about. So the explosion just happened, in quotes, to be at the AT&T location where they just so happen to control the cooling system for the supercomputer and house the Dominion voting machines and drives for forensic audit. Does it make sense now why no lives were lost? Does it make sense now why the FBI task lead couldn't even put together a coherent sentence in the press conference yesterday? Does it make sense why the mayor was making light of the situation, almost laughing yesterday? So, just to kind of show you guys, I think this illustrates really well how all of this shit that this person has zero proof for, this is what conspiracy theorists do. This is how they grow. They take things that they don't have any proof of any of this shit. All of the stuff that this guy just mentioned, right? They're all things that you could easily find out if they're actually true or not. Um, for example, here, the supercomputer in Tennessee connected to the AT&T internet in Nashville, right? What supercomputer? Okay, where is it? Right? What's it called? Who built it? Right? Who runs it? It's a supercomputer. That means there must be IT guys that run the computer. What does a supercomputer do? They're just a supercomputer connected to the internet in Nashville. Like, what the fuck does it do? It has to have a function. That means there has to be people that work on it, developers that work on it, QA people, shit like that. Those people have to be paid. That means you could find out their names. This is all stuff that you could easily investigate. And you don't even need to be a fucking private investigator. You don't have to be digging through people's garbage and shit. Half the time you can just find this stuff out because of public records or whatever. How many people does AT&T employ at this one certain place in Nashville? What do they do there? Stuff like that, right? You could find all of this shit out in real life. Another one, okay, former owner of the AT&T building in Nashville, William Kennard. So he doesn't say that, you know, keep it. What did you just say? He didn't say that this guy William Kennard is an executive with AT&T. He doesn't say that he's the guy running the program or whatever. He just used to own the building, former owner of the building. So it's a guy that doesn't actually own the building at all, you know, right? Is a board member for this particular company and AT&T, you know, who also worked for Bill Clinton's FCC chair and Obama's ambassador to the EU. So what? So he was a powerful and connected guy, used to own a building at a place, you know, and he's a member of these other like companies. Do you see how weak this connection is? You know what I mean? Like it's a very like it's a connection that it's meaningless. It's a meaningless connection. Like so what? So a guy that used to work for Obama, right, and is a board member for a company used to own this building that blew up. So does that mean what? What does it mean? He doesn't actually explain what any of that shit means. All you have to do is just make the assumption and throw it out there, and then the person reading it, the viewer, the reader, makes the connection themselves. And that's how guys like, you know, like if you watch Alex Jones, that's what he does. He doesn't straight out say this and this and blah blah blah. He just mentions these facts, and then the viewer themselves put it together, right? You know, so it's all kind of bullshit. It's all really, and it gets weaved into this sort of alternate reality mythology, you know. And it's just so funny. It's like, you know, all so this guy believed in all of this shit, and then there's a building that blows up, you know, and he just weaved it into his mythology right there. I mean, good point, Dynacat. Very likely he never even knew he owned the building. Low. But there's a point that he probably also never actually owned it. That's another thing. You got to remember, half of this shit is just lies to begin with. Right. So where's this guy getting this information from? How do you know that William Kennard owned this building? You know what I mean? Like, this is all shit that he could easily, you know, you could easily investigate this. And if it was all true, you could win a fucking Pulitzer Prize for, like, you know, fucking investigative journalism and shit. But they don't actually do that because it's all bullshit. So anyway, that's just kind of, I wanted to, like, throw this out there because it's funny how this was posted like 2 days after the shit happened, and already it got mixed into the conspiracy theory soup. And it's just so funny how fast this shit happens. You know what I mean? And it makes you wonder, like, well, it's no fucking wonder that, like, you know, 40% of Republicans think the election was stolen now when they're reading shit like this. Right? So let's move on a little bit. Here's another comment. Richard Flora, they were after the Diminon. Diminon machines. Okay. That were cooling down is what I was told. So much of the cheating on the rigged voting machines. See that? They were after the Dominion voting machines which were cooling down. So why do voting machines need to cool down exactly? Like, what are they, fucking steam driven? Is that what we have? Like steampunk voting machines and shit? Why would they have to cool down? That doesn't make any sense. Is what I was told. So see, there you go. Somebody just told some guy some dumbass rumor, and then he immediately fucking believed it. So much for the cheating on the rigged voting machines. You see that shit? See how easy it is for people to just believe in bullshit? You know? And I know you're gonna say, like, well, these are like YouTube comments, right? So this is like picking the bottom fucking rotten fruit off the tree and shit, right? These are what real people. These are real people. Real people actually believe this shit. And this is like, you know, this is, if you want to see what the actual real people say, then you have to go and read what the actual real people say. You know what I mean? You have to see, you know, you have to delve into the comment sections. You have to go on like the sleazy parts of Reddit. You know what I mean? You have to go to fucking Vote and fucking what's that right wing imitation Twitter? You know, Parlor, right? You ever go on Parlor? Parlor is a ridiculous cesspool, but you know, you need to keep track of what these people are fucking thinking, right? Because you're not going to get it just from, like, you know, reading the New York Times, right? You're not going to get like, well, this, you know, to see the actual unrest and like, the crazed fucking ridiculous conspiracy theory ridden fucking alternate universes people live in. And that'll explain I don't know. Just moving on here, but I guess this guy must have been like posting this from his like cell phone or some shit. Either that or like, you know, maybe he doesn't really know how to spell machines. Moving on. Codophone. Coofdome. The Dominion election ballot machines were in that building trying to destroy the evidence before Trump lawsuit finds it. Yep. Um, just want to throw out there is no Trump lawsuit to find any evidence, right? None of the lawsuits have been, that none of the more than 60 lawsuits that the Trump campaign lost had anything to do with Dominion voting machines and trying to uncover evidence or anything like that. Had nothing to do with any of that shit. So it's like, why does this person believe this? Because they probably saw it on a YouTube video. They probably got somebody posting it to them on Facebook, right? That's probably what happened. These people don't read. These people don't research. These people don't actually have any idea about how elections or how even politics really works. It's like we have like, about 30% of the country that just lives in this fantasy world where they think real life is like TV and they think they're like Fox Mulder trying to uncover the fucking super secret evidence to stop the cigarette smoking man from like taking over the country and shit. Seriously, this is like, that's what it is. It's like we have people that live in a fantasy. They live in this because they don't have any fucking clue about how the real world works. And the scary part is these people vote. Right? Seriously, like, how are we gonna, what do we do about this guy? This guy right here, this is probably just a normal guy right here. Probably has a job, probably not a very high paying job, probably just wants to live his life and do his thing normally without having to like, um, get in anybody's problems or get in anybody's way or whatever like that. And he believes this ridiculous, untrue bullshit. This guy's probably not an insane right-wing, Proud Boy, violent asshole. Probably just, thinks he's like trying to do the right thing. How do we like get people like this back into contact with actual reality and away from this conspiracy theory horseshit? How do we do that? I don't know. I wish I had an answer. Moving on. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene. So, she is she actually won her election here on, November 4th, right? I refuse to certify a stolen election. It is the duty of Congress to secure the integrity of our elections. On January 6th, I will vote for Trump, right? Keep in mind that she actually won she is being elected now to Congress, right? From November 4th. So, does that mean that the election that she won was fraudulent? You know? Like, why is it that we would, let's say I was going to steal the election for Joe Biden, right? Why would I steal it for the president and then not prevent this Republican person from getting elected as well? Why wouldn't I just make it go all the way down? So we wouldn't need to have a runoff in Georgia or whatever, right? It doesn't make any sense. And here's the thing. This person here, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I don't know anything about her, right? But I can tell you, I am 99% sure that she thinks this is all bullshit too. She understands that Joe Biden just lost Joe Biden won. Donald Trump just lost the fucking election, right? She understands that. She understands that there's no vote rigging. There's no trickery. The Dominion voting machines didn't flip all the votes, right? There weren't, millions of illegal aliens being bussed around voting. Shit like that. She understands all that. She's doing this because it's theater. It's political theater, because she wants to get in on Trump's base, right? And, it's ridiculous. It's like the insane people are running the asylum now. And in a sense, I can understand why the Republicans are acting like this, why they're going to waste everybody's time on January 6th, objecting to the electoral college certification when they know that it has zero chance of actually affecting anything. They're doing it because their constituents are telling them to. That's what's going on. All these insane people that we're talking about here who believe that this shit's been rigged, that it's been, the election's been stolen, all of this crap, they're sending letters and emails and tweeting and calling their representatives, excuse me, telling them, right, to do something about it, right? So they're getting, flooded with communications from their constituents saying that they want them to do something about it. So they got to do something about it. That's what it is. So that's why they're going through this theater that they know they understand that it's not going to do anything. And but they're doing it because this is what their people want. It's kind of obscene. I don't know. Let's see. Moving on here. Okay, so this is from 4chan. Now we're kind of getting a little deeper into the insane conspiracy theory stuff. So please beware. Trigger warning. There is some slurs in this, you know, text here, right? But here we go. Now, just to kind of give you another example, how fast it took them to fold in the Nashville bombing, you know, into QAnon here. So here it is. I'll not say that word. I believe Nashville bombing is from Q, infographic related, QRD. Helper says unimaginable things gonna happen and communication from Q will be cut. Says not to believe mainstream media. Last post from Q is on December 8th. Today is December 25th, exactly 17 days from the 8th. Last Q post is a video of the song We're Not Gonna Take It. God, really? Alright, literally 2 seconds in, there's a car bomb blowing up. Vid here. Today, police are called into the area with a report of a shooting. When they get there, there was no shooting. MSN narrative is that the police noticed a weird van. In reality, we have a video here that shows a loudspeaker saying to evacuate the area. That's when the police started telling people to evacuate. Bomb them goes off. Okay. And at the same time, at the time and date when nobody would be out on the street, nearby there's an AT&T building that is also used by NSA for communications. Fox News commentators and news anchors here are dumbfounded. They speak about how this doesn't fit the MO of a terror attack. It's almost like they wanted to warn the cops and nobody to get hurt. I have been a long-time staunch enemy of Q, but the similarities are too much to ignore. Guys, the bombing isn't the happening. If this truly was a Q operation, the true happening is that there are freedom fighters and they just declared war. We'll make a new thread. So, just even this right here, all right? See how many assumptions are going on in all of these. Now, most of this is actually true shit that actually happened. Okay, yeah, okay. So there was a post here, blah 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 blah, right? But just look at the connections that get made, all right? Because I'm trying to kind of show how these people think. Right, because the way conspiracy theories take root in your mind is they leave it up to you to make the connections yourself, you know. Um, so it says, there's last post from Q on the 8th. Today is the 25th, exactly 17 days from the 8th. What does that have to do with anything? Right? Exactly 17 days from the 8th? What? Is there some numerology going on here? 1 plus 7 equals 8, and that's the 8th, whatever. Okay, 2 seconds into the thing, it blows up, right? Here's what I was talking about before here with early reporting not being so accurate. Today, police are called into the area with a report of a shooting. When they get there, there is no shooting, right? Yeah, see, that happens all the time, right? There was a report of shooting because they heard noises that sounded like a shooting, but it wasn't a shooting. So then people they'll take that event and they'll think that it has some kind of greater meaning than it actually doesn't. You know what I mean? And it's because at the beginning of all these things, there's lots of conflicting reports going back and forth. And this is exactly what I was talking about. Just like in 9/11 when there were like different reports of bombs going off and stuff. And there really weren't, that kind of thing, right? Um, you know, here's another one. Nearby, there's an AT&T building that is also used by NSA for communications. How do you know that? Right? Does this guy have any proof of that? No, right? That comes from a news article from like 2006, right? Way, way back in the day, where the NSA has an agreement with telecommunications companies that they were to put back doors into all of their computer systems to allow the NSA to tap in if they got a warrant. That's what that comes from, right? So it comes like they took that news article from like 14 years ago, and like now all of a sudden that just means that all AT&T buildings are used by the NSA to spy on people. See how the shit works? See how they like link all this together? There's no actual proof, and you could find that out. You could go and get like, a Freedom of Information Act thing saying, hey, was this building being used by the NSA to spy on people? Yes or no? And they would have to tell you this, right? They would either say no, or they would say that it's classified, which means yes. Okay. Mm. Right. You could find that shit out, but they're not, because they don't actually, they're not going to do that because they don't actually investigate things. Conspiracy theorists don't actually investigate stuff. They make assumptions. That's something to keep in mind whenever you watch like Graham Hancock, or you watch like there's another guy named Christopher Everard. He's a fucking asshole. He stole my artwork, Christopher Everard. That's a story for another stream. you know, or Alex Jones, or the fucking Epic Times, or any of these like conspiracy theory fucking mongers. That's what they do. They don't actually investigate things. You know, they just make assumptions because they want you to make the connection, right? And they don't actually say anything. You know, um, right? Unless it's something that they know that they can't get sued for. You know what I mean? Like Alex Jones will straight up call Hillary Clinton a Satanist and a pedophile, something like that, because he knows that she's not gonna, he knows that she's not gonna do shit to him, right? He knows that he's basically just like a fly on a piece of donkey shit compared to Hillary Clinton, and she's never gonna sue his ass, right? But he won't straight up call like other people murderers or anything like that. He won't actually say anything that'll get him in legal trouble. Now they always skirt that line. You know what I mean, right? And it's because this is the key to the grift when it comes to this particular brand of right wing grifting. It's to make people feel like you're telling them and giving them the super secret information and informing them, and you're looking for their best interest, when in real life all it is just to get them to get views on their videos and to get you to buy their DVDs and their fucking books and shit. It's all a grift. It's a money making scheme. All of this shit. So anyway, moving on. Let's see. Here's another one. This one's might be a little hard to read for you guys. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger on this side here. Give me 1 second, guys. Let me see if I can't just sort of increase the size of this just a little bit so that you guys can read it. Whoa, go back. There we go. All right, so here we go. More Nashville bombing conspiracy theory shit. Okay. This is, of course, from 4chan. Yeah, 4chan is low-hanging fruit, too, but a lot of this shit starts on 4chan. That's another thing that we gotta remember. A lot, QAnon started on 4chan, so it's like, 4chan is a site with millions and millions of people that hit it every day. You know, we only hear about, like, Poll and all of the crazy, ridiculous, racist shit that happens there, but there's other boards there, too, right? Where people talk about, like, everything from video games to fashion, you know what I mean? But anyway, but yeah, this is another example of how it just how quickly this shit gets mythologized. Okay, just wanted to break down this first document because it really sets the narrative as to what exactly is going on with these leaks. QRD YouTube channel MCG uploads video of Nashville bombing that he says he has obtained from someone else. He replies in the comments and tells his story. Another YouTube channel, also named SMCG, starts uploading cryptic videos with Chinese and links to file drops which contain these documents we were discussing. Seems LARPy, But here's where things get weird. The documents that get released have what looks like operational messages from the CCP group. This group apparently calls themselves the CNASR, or Coalition for the North American Socialist Republic. You can see where we're going with this, right, folks? Okay, so this operations update comes from the Intelligence Policy Board and the CNASR, as seen in the heading CCP movements in regions 1A, 1B, 3A, and 3B will be taking place in the coming weeks. Okay. Oh shit. What regions are these? Are these troop movements or just asset movements? Under no circumstances are any regional coordinators to interfere or address these activities with non-CNASR designated individuals. Okay, this shows that there's a structure there. There are regional coordinators that talk to the CCP, and the CCP does not directly involve themselves at this point. All scheduled operations will proceed as planned. There's no direct assistance from the CCP personnel. Looks like the CCP doesn't want any fingerprints on these scheduled operations. They have operations scheduled. What could these be? Was Nashville a scheduled operation? All material support will continue through the regional coordinators and will be distributed to local chapters on a weekly basis. My guess is that material support is money and they will get payouts from these regional coordinators. There have been no active threats to operational security at this time, and we will continue to provide updates to regional coordinators as information becomes available. So basically, what's going on here? This guy's making a claim that there's a YouTube channel, SMCG, that uploads videos of the Nashville bombing, right, that he obtained from someone else. Okay. And then there's another channel that's putting up cryptid videos that have links to file drops with documents. And then this is all the shit that it says in the documents. So, scaring people into thinking that the Chinese are going to invade the country. I'm assuming when Donald Trump leaves office, Joe Biden will then take over as president and then use the Chinese to take over the country? Is that what this is trying to say? See how fast this shit gets mixed into it? Now, this is before we found out that the Nashville thing was just like a suicide attempt, right? No, it's like, it can't just be that. It's like now the Nashville, bombing is part of a secret takeover of the United States by communist China, right? With all of this shit. And I mean, seriously, how I'm kind of at a loss for words here. Like, what do you have to believe to actually believe any of this shit is actually true? Has any, like, basis in fucking reality at all? That you have to believe that Chinese spies, right, were behind the Nashville bombing, right? You'd have to believe that Chinese spies use messages embedded in YouTube videos in order to pass communications back and forth and file drops, right? Out there on the internet for anybody to see. I don't know if you could really guess about how unsecure that is. The entire point of being a spy and passing encrypted messages is so that they would be fucking encrypted, not just so any moron with a fucking cell phone could look at your, like, super secret spy video and then get your communications down. I mean, this is really, like, top level fucking moronic right here. This is the dumbest shit, Exactly. Thank you, Dynacat. I'm pretty sure that the Chinese Communist Party does not call itself CCP. Yeah, no shit. Exactly, right? It's like, so is there really a YouTube channel with that, And here's the thing, anybody can make a fucking YouTube channel. Anybody, right? So what's to keep somebody from planting this shit in the first place? Just to, like, facilitate their own conspiracy theory, to troll other people. That's how QAnon actually started, right? QAnon started by people on 4chan trolling each other, right? It started, and I remember the moment QAnon started. It was way back when Donald Trump was at he was at an event with like 4 different generals, and they were like all taking pictures, and he made an offhand comment to one of the reporters, and he said, "You know what this is?" And the reporter said, "What?" And Donald Trump said, "The calm before the storm." Right? And the reporter said, "Oh, well, what does that mean?" And he goes, "You'll see." Right? And it was basically just Donald Trump talking out of his ass because he's a moron. Because he wanted to, to give this sort of like, wait and see kind of thing, because he's a fucking reality TV show guy. And he wanted there to be this big to be continued kind of thing so that people would tune in and keep their fucking ratings up. And they took that offhand comment that Donald Trump made and ran with it and created this elaborate conspiracy theory about, QAnon is actually a guy on the inside and blah, blah, blah. And no matter how many times the shit got debunked, like people would post shit that, and they'd make like Q would post things about stuff that was going to happen, predictions, and it wouldn't come true, you know. And then there was a photo claiming that it was like the inside of the White House, and it ended up being like the inside of a hotel room, and like it was taken, and then another photo that was supposed to be like inside Air Force One, and they found out that was a still from a different video that had nothing to do with it. And it was like, no matter how many times they figured out it was bullshit, people just latched onto it. And now you have guys like this with this incredibly intricate conspiracy theory that could be debunked 5,000 different fucking ways or verified 5,000 different fucking ways. And people are just believing this shit. And that's the thing. Like, so you could verify this in a million ways. Is there really a YouTube channel, SMCG, right? Where are they from? Well, Google knows where they're from. You know, Google knows everything about you. If you open an account, Google knows where you're posting from, right? They probably know your real name, your real age, even if you like open up a fake fucking account somewhere, blah blah blah. If you use that account to browse around on the internet and search for things, then they know all of that information. They know whatever medications you fucking search for. They know what porn sites you go to. They know what you fucking spank your chicken to, right? They know all of that shit. They know your friends and your family because you're going to like social media and like what people you're friending on Facebook and on Twitter and on whatever other social media you use. So they probably know where your friends, your family, where you live, how old you are, all of that shit. So it's very easy for if to actually investigate this, find out who made that channel, where, are they really Chinese spies, blah blah. This is a million ways that you could verify or debunk these things, but they don't actually do that. They don't actually do that. This is all some elaborate trolling thing, where being fed to these people so that some like other, most likely kid, most likely teenager on the other side is laughing his ass off while people take his fucking like, ARG like seriously. Anyway, Sean Nillabud, thank you for joining, man. I will read through all these comments towards the end of the stream as always, but thank you for joining. And onward to dystopia. Thank you for joining too. Anyway, I don't know. This shit's ridiculous. Moving on. Here we go. Now this kind of made me a little like freaked here because let me show you what I'm talking about here, right? Um, I have two of these, right? David O, I feel like this was a test for something bigger. Be prepared and stay safe. And then my very next one is from somebody named Kitty Gore. We're definitely being tested for something even bigger. Stay safe, everyone. That's kind of weird. Kind of weird how two completely unrelated people would make the exact same comment like that, right? I actually looked at these two people's, you know, accounts. This one, at least, is a real account. This person, whoever she is actual real person. This guy, not so much. This was like a brand new account. And it's making me think, when you see shit like this, right? People posting the same thing or nearly the same thing, it's kind of evidence that there's somebody out there, like, it's either one of two things. Either both of these people watched the same video that told them it was a test, right? Or there's actual, like, bots that are, like, posting all of this shit. Well, this person isn't a bot, so I think that both of these people may have watched the same video to tell them that it was a test, which is more evidence of just another example of how fast, like, how quickly all of this snowballs, right? Where how fast ideas get implanted into people's heads like this, right? So now they're being, oh, we're being tested for something even bigger. You know, all it takes is one guy on the internet to make a fucking video about it that gets a decent amount of views, and then suddenly just, you know, the meme just proliferates all throughout right wing circles. And before you know it, this guy is going on, like, you know, this person's going on her Facebook spreading this shit around saying it's a test, blah blah blah, get ready. You know, it's a test for some shit that's never going to happen. Just want to throw that out there. But anyway, that was strange. One more. Okay. Um Here we go. This is a guy that think that this was definitely the fault of you know, left wingers on 4chan. You retarded fucking commie share blue in Nassar shits shouldn't have put predictive programming in your design by committee memes. Oh god. Nashville SWAT, months and months before the RV bombing, all the way back at October 31st, there are no coincidences. You stupid, you absolute stupid, dumb idiot poo poo men. Why did you think it wouldn't be noticed? Now it's all traceable. You're all going to get feted. This one jumped out at me for two reasons, right? So, first thing, predictive programming. If you guys don't know what predictive programming is, I actually made a video on it like 5 years ago. Uh, way back in the day, right? What is predictive programming? Well, predictive programming is the idea that perpetrators of these conspiracies drop hints into popular culture, right? So that, you know, you ever see, like, they'll say, oh, The Simpsons predicted this or something. Yeah, the Simpsons predicted the 9/11, or the Simpsons predicted, you know, the Trump presidency or some shit like that. The official name for that is predictive programming. And the idea goes like, okay, the cabal of whoever it is that actually runs the world, whether you think they're like Jewish space lizards or aliens or some shit like that, right? Whoever they are, you know, the evil baby stealing Satanists that run the earth. It's part of their religion to drop little hints to their nefarious plans, and the way they do it is by, you know, percolating it into pop culture, right? So that's why you see, you know, you'll see guys, like, you'll see YouTube videos of, like, say for example, famous singers making hand gestures, and then they'll say this is an Illuminati hand gesture. That stuff like that, you know. Or yeah, like I said, using The Simpsons as an example. The Simpsons, you know, predicted 9/11 as an example, right? Or this video game predicted 9/11, you know, or something like that. And that's the idea. The idea is they've come up with this, and it's really the dumbest shit ever. It's the dumbest fucking thing ever to think that this would even be real. But that's the idea. The idea is that they're dropping secret hints to their plans to us, right? You know, through movies, through video games, through you know, popular music, books, and things like that. And if you know how to interpret these things the right way, you can get the super secret info and actually, you know, stop, like, Joe Biden from forcing everybody to get abortions or some shit. Like, seriously, that's what it is. Now, think about that. That's predictive programming, just in general. Think about that. If that was actually real, all the things you have to believe, you know. Like, let's just take an episode of The Simpsons, for example. Like, let's say The Simpsons, there's an episode where they predict Donald Trump is going to become president. And they made this episode in, like, 1997 or some shit like that, right? Yeah, here you go. See, Sean Nilbutt, The Simpsons did a cartoon of Trump descending the elevator. Right. Then someone claimed that it was from 2013 and admitted it had been going for a while, then it cropped it that it was from after the event. Yeah, exactly, right. But, you know, let's just assume that it was real, okay? What would that actually mean in real life if that was a real thing, right? What would it actually mean? Let me turn off this monitor here. What would it actually mean if the Simpsons were dropping hidden fucking messages into their cartoons, right? That would mean that somebody out there is taking the script that the cartoon has, and it has to get approved by whoever owns it, I guess at Fox or whatever, right? I guess that's Disney now. And they would have to insist, like, okay, we like this, but we want you to put in this scene. We want you to put in the scene of Trump descending an elevator, right? Way back in 1998. And they would say, well, why? And it's like, just don't ask why, just do it. All right. So then, that would mean that there was like some people who were like planning way back 20 years in advance that Trump is gonna go down this elevator, right? Like it doesn't make any sense. And then all of these years later, so this gets dropped. All of these years later, they finally enact their nefarious plan to have Trump run for president, and then they set up the camera just the right way to like. Can you really imagine all of the connects, all of the things that would have to be true, all the things that would have to happen, all the people who would have to be in the know and to not say anything in order for these things to actually have any basis in fucking reality whatsoever? It it defies reason. You know, it's beyond insane. And we have like 30% of our fucking population that just eats this shit up for lunch. It's kind of unbelievable. I don't, I don't know. Moving on. Do I have any more of these? Let me see. Okay. Let me see how many more I've actually got here. Where am I anyway? This one is what is this one called? Black Hats. Okay. I think this is the last one. Let me just go back and turn this on one more time. Okay, this one's kind of interesting, this comment that I found here. All right, let me just read this because this might be a little small for you guys to read, so I'll just read it too. Something of note, Linwood constantly talks of phone calls that exist and incriminate people. According to Simon, the Nashville bombing was done by the White Hats, aka good guys. It was meant to be disguised as a bad guy operation. Anyway, the AT&T building has phone recordings on record since 1986. The bad guy's goal was phone interception equipment that was illegal that could intercept police calls. They wanted to destroy or capture this equipment. But the good guys, the White Hat's goal wasn't just to deal with that. It was the phone call cache. So I just wanted people to keep these two things in mind in the future right now. Linwood is talking about incriminating phone calls. And the good guys just obtained all phone calls made through that hub since 1986. Coincidence? All right. None of this shit is real. First off, AT&T does not have phone recordings going back to 1986. If they did, that would be illegal. Right? And if you could prove they did, once again, you would get a Pulitzer Prize in investigative reporting. All right? AT&T is not allowed to just record every fucking phone call randomly for no fucking reason. The NSA is not allowed to just record every phone call either. Right? And I remember this, like, for example, okay, about 5 years ago, one of the devs at my old job, I was a QA guy, right? One of the devs was kind of into this shit. And there was a news article that came out about how the NSA was creating a new facility, right, in Nevada, right? And this was going to have storage capability of X number of terabytes or petabytes worth of storage or some shit. And he spent a very long time trying to convince me, this old developer, right? Trying to convince me that this was evidence that the NSA was going to just start recording all of your phone calls every time you made a phone call, right? And this was right around the time, that like Snowden came out and was talking about, all the shit that the NSA is doing and how they're data mining, that kind of thing, right? What they do now, you know, that's bullshit, okay? The NSA is not recording all of your phone calls, not at all. What they actually do is they look at metadata of phone calls, and even and this was the thing that was like the controversy, because even this is, there's some legal question as to whether or not this violates, your Fifth Amendment right, or your Fourth Amendment right to search and seizure, right? Is it your Fourth Amendment? I think it is. I don't know. I could be wrong there. But anyway, you know, um, what they do is they look at metadata. So they look at who you're calling, right? And like what time you're calling and all of that stuff. And they're not actually listening in on the conversation, because they're not allowed, the NSA is not allowed to listen into domestic calls without a warrant, right? So, um, exactly. So Dynacat, you got it. They record the multiple signals from which they can extract individual calls if they need to. Right. Exactly. That's what they do, right? They can, if they then decide that, okay, this person is talking to terrorists, for example, then they have to go get a warrant, which admittedly is just a rubber stamp. You know, that's all it is. They just get a rubber stamp, like, and, right. But the idea that, like I think it's an FSA warrant or whatever they call that, basically they never get refused for these warrants, right? But the idea that they're recording every bit of every phone call ever, you know, is first off not true, and secondly, that's not physically possible. Okay. There's no way that they could even record every phone call or every text message, for like a single day in the entire country, right? There's just not the storage space just doesn't exist for that much. Think about that. Just think about let's just say, not even talking about emails or, you know, emails, yes, emails do get recorded, right? Everywhere. But because every time you send an email, it gets stored on whatever server it is that you're sending it. So that's different. Text messages probably also, right? But phone calls, I mean, just think about like, let's say you have a 10-minute phone call with somebody, right? What is that? 10-minute phone call is what, 5, maybe 10 megabytes, right? you know, um, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. So, Sean, you're completely correct, right? Every ISP has a direct feed to Langley and has done for decades, right? That's absolutely true. But what I'm saying is that they're not bulk recording all of the phone calls, right? They're not doing that. They're looking at, like you said, they're looking at metadata, right? And then if they need to, if they determine that you're suspected of a crime, then they get a FISA warrant. Exactly, right? Which is, the FISA warrant is admittedly just a rubber stamp. They never get refused for FISA warrants. Obviously, not that I know of, right? And then then they're allowed to, they're supposed to actually pass that on to the FBI. Like, the NSA is not supposed to actually listen in on people, domestically, right? I think that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to pass it to the FBI, and then the FBI investigates, right? But they're not recording every single call, and because that's what I was, that was the conspiracy theory. That's what the developer of my old work was trying to tell me. They're recording every single call, and then they're using um, voice recognition, right, in order to mine that, to data mine that, and pull out, possible evidence of crimes or whatever, right? Which is, the technology for that shit didn't exist back in 2013 when he was telling me this stuff, right? And it doesn't exist today. It's just, you know, it's that the scale is impossible. It's absolutely impossible. Think about how much data that would actually be for just one day to capture all of the phone calls in the entire country. Just not possible, to capture and record all of them. I mean, I think it would even be tough just to like capture all the calls in one day and just look at metadata. That's probably insanely ridiculous as far as like, the amount of data and computing power involved and all of that shit too, right? So it's like, you really, there really is no basis in, I mean, you would need like quantum computers for this stuff in order to actually do these things, right? So we're looking at something that, yeah, maybe in 20 years they could do it. But I mean, even just storing a recording of every phone call, like there's not enough space. Like it boggles the mind about how much actual space that would be. And this guy here in this comment saying that they have recordings on record from going back to 1986. Like, well, what are those recordings recorded on? Are they recorded on fucking reel-to-reel tape? you know, are they like are they on cassette tape and shit? Like, so what is there like just this gigantic warehouse with like fucking billions and billions of like you know fucking reel-to-reel old school reel-to-reel tapes going back to the 1980s? It doesn't make any sense. It's ridiculous to even think, right? And it's just an example of how like why did this guy think that? Why did this guy think that the NSA was recording every phone call? Because he read a article in the news, didn't know, misinterpreted what the actual article actually said, didn't really understand what it actually said, and then he made assumptions. You know, see, it seems to me that you guys look like you kind of know what you're talking about here. I'm seeing Echelon in here, and I'm saying it wouldn't be Langley, it would be Fort Meade. So looks like you guys are hip to this stuff. And you understand how it works. So I'm kind of preaching to the choir here. Right. But still, it's sort of like, I just wanted to, this particular comment here was very much an example of how, like, divergent from reality this stuff actually can be, you know? So, anyway, looks like we got a little bit of a discussion going in the comments there. Let's see. Ow, shit, stabbed myself. Let's see. Dynacat, not individual calls per se, but they record the multiple signals from which they can extract individual calls if they need. Yep. And then Sean, I'm Irish. They tested Echelon in Ireland. The system listens to every call and uses voice recognition to pick out keywords and key phrases. Once the system was rolled out in the U.S., they have pretty much. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, every call. I mean, I think I'd like to research some more of that myself. And I've heard about this Echelon thing too. You know, from what I understand, they throw out a net. Because it's kind of impossible to check every single call. There's just too much. You know what I mean? But they could say, okay, well, we know, and like listening to chatter, like for example, like they'll say, okay, there's certain channels, like let's say we're talking about Mideast terrorism, right? There's certain channels that the FBI and the NSA monitor, you know, and they call it chatter, and they'll say, okay, well the chatter says that there may be some event happening on this day in this city, right? So what they'll do is, yeah, they'll kind of take an area and they'll do something like that. And it's legal because there's not actually a human being listening to the calls, right? It's all automated, you know. But it can't listen to every call, like, ever. It's it's just not possible. There's just millions and billions of calls going back and forth, all the time, right? If you're trying to capture the entire country, there's not a computer that exists in the world that can do that. Right? You know, um, and especially record them. Just not even close. But they can say, okay, well, here's an area. Like, let's say, um, this one particular community in downtown New York or something, right? Where we suspect there may be sleeper cells or some shit like that. And then they'll throw a net out there and they'll capture a sample. They'll capture a sample of the phone calls or whatnot. And yeah, voice recognition goes through and like, you know, this is shit that they can do now. They couldn't do this, 5, 6, 7 years ago. Right? I mean, so it's not, but it's not people listening at calls. It's basically what they're doing? They're doing stuff like it's a computer that'll search for keywords, things like bomb, you know, operation, that kind of thing, right? And then also whatever like code slang that they use in order to get around shit like that, right? And what it does is that it goes, okay, we have these possible hits, and then they have to go get a FISA warrant, and then they get real people and they narrow it down, stuff like that, right? So that's what it is. It's not like an army of guys sitting at computer screens monitoring every single phone call. Like, you ever see the Simpsons movie? You know, there's a scene in the Simpsons movie where it's like they show the NSA and it's just like 5,000 people sitting at computer screens, all like, listening to like phone calls, and they catch Homer Simpson saying something. It's not like that at all, And I don't know. I mean, but especially I mean, it's really that's what's going on. It's people are kind of taking these things and they're making wild assumptions about them, and then they're folding them into conspiracy theories, and then before you know it, you're like, you know, sharing like fucking retweets of like flat Earth shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just funny how quickly it all snowballs together. You know, a lot of it does, though, like you're saying there, Sean. Though a lot of it actually does have a little nugget of truth on the inside. Yes, these are things that, there are sort of domestic spying programs that groups like the NSA engage in. You know what I mean? But it's like, what do they actually do? What are their actual real capabilities? What's the real motive behind them? This is where it all gets like blurry and stuff, because a lot of those things are classified and we just don't know. And guys like Alex Jones take that stuff and fucking make a career out of spreading disinformation about it. Right? Where it's all suddenly like suddenly the NSA is not monitoring chatter, but they're really spying on you because they want to take away your guns and shit, and like, force everybody to get abortions or whatever, and make us all live in hobbit homes. Right? So anyway, let's see. Let's kind of move on a little bit here. How much time we got? We're at about an hour in. Mm. That was the first part of our show here, folks. I want to talk a little bit about January 6th, kind of changing the subject a little bit. Although it sort of relates. So what happens on January 6th, right? Well, that is when the Congress certifies the Electoral College, right? And it seems like, yeah, okay, they have to do this over and over. Um, and there is now a lot of talk on the right wing about how they're going to disrupt this, right? So lots of, and I guess this all does actually relate because we're talking about crazy people, and now the same crazy people and their conspiracy theories with the election that just refuse to fucking die. And this is kind of spread to our elected officials here. So there are a number of Republican senators who are now saying they're going to, and we touched a little bit on this about 30 minutes ago or so, about how they're going to, you know, um, contest the election, right? So what happens on January 6th? Okay. Um, what happens on January 6th? Well, this is basically just a ceremony, essentially, right? What happens is that Congress is just basically reaffirming that the votes which have already been counted, the electoral college votes which have already been counted, they're reaffirming that they're accurate, right? They've already been certified, and it's essentially just, a ceremonial kind of thing, right? So last week, um, Louis Gohmert, who is a senator, Republican insane senator person, right, sued Mike Pence, claiming that Mike Pence has an obligation to not certify the election, right? Because he's the vice president. So the vice president in this particular ceremony, what it is they give him an envelope that has the electoral votes from each state, and he just opens it, puts it on a thing, and then all of the senators go certified, and then he opens the other one from another state, right? Louis Gohmert sued him and thus sued the federal government, claiming that Mike Pence has an obligation to not count the votes from, contested states, which all happen to be states that Donald Trump lost, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, right? Those four states that Trump needed to win the election, right? Um, and which this yesterday, as of yesterday, this lawsuit got thrown out because once again they don't have any standing, right? And even Mike Pence asked the government to throw this out for him, right? Because he just I'm getting the feeling Mike Pence just wants all this shit to be over with so that he can just like go back to being whatever the fuck he was before he got involved in all of this ridiculousness, right? Um, so this is why we saw that tweet before, that I had on that tweet that I had from Marjorie Taylor Greene saying that she was going to, be one of the Republican senators to object to this. And what does this actually mean, right? So what's going to happen is that Mike Pence is going to get the envelope. He's going to say, this is the envelope from Pennsylvania. And he's going to open it up. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Ted Cruz and a bunch of other people are going to stand up and say, I object to that. And what happens is that means by law they have to, or by, I don't know if it's a law, I think it's more of just a Senate rule. They have to debate for 2 hours whether or not it was real or not. And in order for it to get overturned or thrown out, there has to be agreement from both houses of Congress. So somebody in the House has to sign on to that. Well, since the House, the House itself has to vote basically to sign on to that. But since the House is run by Democrats, it's not going to happen. So basically, all it is a disruption. It's a way to disrupt this last little bit, and this last little official certification, and a way to to virtue signal to Trump's base that we're looking out for you. And in real life, it's just that's really all it is. It's basically Republican virtue signaling, which is going to delay everything and fuck it all up. So instead of having this thing take half an hour, it's going to take about 8 hours now because they're going to have to for all four of those states, they're going to contest all four of those states. So it's going to be like 8 hours long. So yeah, well, sucks to be in Congress, but right. So really, it has zero chance of actually affecting the election, right? Well, unfortunately, the people outside that day protesting don't understand that shit. So we have lots of threats from Proud Boys and other assorted right wingers who are going to Washington, D.C. on the 6th that day in order to raise hell, right? And the last time these assholes were in Washington, 4 people got stabbed, 1 person got shot, there was lots of violence, people getting beaten, shit like that. So that's basically what we have to look forward to this coming Wednesday. Is it Wednesday the 6th? I think it is. Yes, it is. Wednesday is the 6th, right? Which this is kind of like the last gasp, the last official gasp they have, and then after that, it's really only inauguration day, right? And then that's it. It's over, and so people are kind of on edge here, and I'm reading lots of stuff about lots of you know kind of terrorist threats here coming from right-wing people, from Proud Boys, from Patriot Prayer, guys like that. People who have, spent the last 2 months writing all of those comments and things that we just got finished reading, right? And yeah, it's looking kind of like this might be a serious riot, almost. One thing that I heard was that the hotel that the Proud Boys usually stay at is just closed that day. They just closed it down, right? You know, um, the bar that they usually go to is going to be closed that day. They're not going to allow anybody to, stay there. They would rather not, get the money from that they would get from hosting these people, because they're afraid. They're afraid. And so if you live in Washington, D.C., or anywhere near that area, and you're going to be out and about on January 6th, please be careful. You know, we've already kind of seen that, these people are I mean, God, we're kind of lucky that nobody got killed, 2 weeks ago, right? When they went and just fucking like rampaged in DC and stabbed people and shit like that. We're kind of lucky nobody died. You know what I mean? And like I've been saying a lot, in a lot of my streams here, it's kind of only a matter of time before one of these guys goes nuts and goes on a fucking shooting spree. Because you got to remember, the Proud Boys, they show up with guns. Okay, armed. They're wearing fucking bulletproof vests, right? And like body armor. They're carrying like fucking rifles and AR-15s, shit like that, pistols, that sort of thing. And they're itching to actually get the fucking boogaloo happening, right? Um, so yeah, if you're planning to be out there, right? Because there's gonna be counter protesters. The Antifa people are going out to fight them, right? They're the left wing people are like not backing down, and I'm seeing this online too. I'm seeing lots of people saying online, "I'm gonna be there," and to fucking face down these guys, right? And if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna actually go out and like counter protest against the Proud Boys and all that shit, please be very very careful. I think you should invest in a bulletproof vest if you're going out there. Dynacat, you do live in DC. Yeah, be careful, man. If you live in DC, I would seriously consider buying a gun if I were you. Or at the very least, like get some big sturdy locks for your doors. You know what I mean? And like fucking just be ready when shit hits the fan out there, because the closer we get to inauguration day, the more violent these people seem to be getting. And, it really does remind me a lot of how in Nazi Germany the brown shirts would just go on rampages. I don't know if you guys remember that shit. You know, um, this is kind of what happens when we have a fascist takeover like this from sort of these grassroots sort of movements that even though they're not really grassroots, that kind of pop up. And like this is actually really what happened in Nazi Germany. You had the Nazis began in beer halls. You know what I mean? That's where they started. They didn't start with like some elite group of like industrialists who like blah 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 blah, like what I mean, and then instituted fascism from the top down. It's like no, it came from the bottom up, and they were basically fucking brawling thugs. That's what the Nazis were. They called them, they were brown shirts, right? And they would go out and they would have fucking demonstrations against people, and they would beat up like gay people, you know. They would beat up like fucking communists, right? That was their thing. And the communists would fight back in the early days, in Nazi Germany. The communists would brawl with them, right? And this would lead to riots and things. And then people fucking sided with the brown shirts, you know, right? Unfortunately for the world, right? And it's kind of the exact same fucking thing. They're going out, they're beating up commies, well, at least they call them, what they think are commies, right? And they're like fucking, you know, trying to burning shit down, murdering people, and then blaming it on BLM. You know what I mean? BLM did this. They're the ones that torched this building or whatever, right? We've seen this happen all throughout this summer, with all of these like provocateurs. You remember the one guy with the mask that went and smashed up that fucking AutoZone. Remember that guy? You know, and then all the BLM people came up and started questioning him and like basically chased him off. What the fuck are you doing here? Get out of here. The one kid with the pizza that was following him. You remember that video? Turns out that guy was like a fucking right-wing plant. You know, that was actually investigated. I mean, I even talked about that in one of the streams. That guy ended up being like a fucking like white supremacist who was there like an agent provocateur. You know what I mean? So this is what's going to happen. So really, I mean, be careful. If you're going out there, if you're going to go like fight these guys, if you're going to counter protest these guys, resist them, yeah, they need to be resisted, but just watch out. Watch out. Wear fucking some protective clothing. Wear a helmet. Seriously, wear like a fucking helmet. Make sure your shit is like protected. Get a bulletproof vest if you can. Or at least wear like a heavy jacket or something. So something that if they try to stab you with a knife, it like won't be so easy to like penetrate you. That kind of thing. And be fucking careful and watch out for these guys because they're gonna try some shit. I really do think that it's not it's not unreasonable to assume that they may try to invoke some kind of false flag kind of thing where they go burn down a building, where a bunch of them show up dressed up in black and then try to burn some fucking building down or something so that they can blame it on like Antifa. You know, that makes 100% sense to me, because we've seen it happen. We've seen it happen over the last, you know, over the summer. We've seen that more than once. We've seen Proud Boy guys. Those were the people that, in CHOP, if you remember the Seattle Autonomous Zone, how like it got shut down because people kept getting shot. Yeah, it was like Proud Boys shooting people. That's why it got shut down, right? Because they were fucking driving around murdering people and shit. Have any of those people ever been like held accountable? Like, no. You know, Another one, yeah. So here you go, Sean Hill. But I saw footage of cops loading up with bricks. That was another thing we talked about earlier in the year. There would be these phantom brick piles that would show up, right? And it's like, why are people just suddenly leaving bricks here? Because they want to like they call them bait bricks, shit like that. You know what I mean? So yeah, just be really careful. Um, There was a video, damn, we kind of moved on. Shit, I missed it. There was a video I wanted to show you guys about talking about how the Nashville bombing was actually like filled with crisis actors and shit. But you know what? I'm just gonna leave the link to it. I'm not gonna actually like go to this video. But if you guys want to watch this here's the link in the chat. It's a video where they talk about numerology and shit and the Nashville city bombing, and it's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. It's ridiculous. I was gonna play this, but we've kind of already moved past this subject a little. So if you guys want to watch that and laugh at it, be my guest. It's an insane paranoid person using numerology and claiming that there's crisis actors and all this stuff, and it's just like absolutely just banana sandwiches insane. Um, anyway, so where are we at? 1:30. Okay, there's one more. Well, there's a couple of other things I want to talk about. We're speaking about Proud Boys. Something else I saw, the Proud Girls. What the fuck are the Proud Girls? You know, have you guys heard about this shit? So apparently there is a female equivalent to the Proud Boys called the Proud Girls. Right? Which is really ridiculous because the Proud Boys, the entire point when the Proud Boys started was that they were a, you know, chauvinist, Western chauvinists is what they call themselves. No girls allowed, right? Which is kind of really sad and ridiculous, and it seems like the Proud Boys and the Proud Girls are not getting along very well. You're seeing them sort of give snippy responses to each other on Reddit and Parler and Twitter and all that shit, right? Um, and it kind of goes to it's kind of an example of how marginalized groups will sometimes identify with their oppressors. You know what I mean? So the thing about the Proud Boys is that okay, no girls allowed, right? When you join the Proud Boys, you're not even supposed to be able to talk to women unless you're married to them, right? So there's videos of like back when the Proud Boys started in like 2016, 2015, whatever, right? When they became like a thing. I'm not sure if that's exactly when they started. There's videos of female reporters trying to talk to him, walking up to him and asking him questions, and the Proud Boy guy would just stand there and not even say anything, not even respond or acknowledge that she existed, you know. And it's because like the first like couple of levels or whatever in your fraternity, you weren't even allowed to like speak to a girl. You're not even supposed to talk to a girl. You're not supposed to like. You're also not supposed to masturbate. That's another thing. I mean, please, have you seen these fucking guys? Obviously, they're breaking that rule, right? But it was very like weird like that, and it's kind of moved away from that since then. The Proud Boys have become much more of a. They've become more of a hate group, more of a militia at this point, you know. But apparently, there's still a large part of it that still kind of goes for the same stupid shit, like you have to name 5 of your favorite breakfast cereals and you have to beat up a, whatever, right? You have to go beat up a left winger and all this other shit. Apparently they still kind of follow this stuff, although it's like starting to move past that kind of thing, right? So it kind of really gets me like the fact that there would be a female equivalent to these obviously, you know, very male centric, very chauvinistic, you know, group is sort of ridiculous. It reminds me of there was a movie, God, I can't remember the name of this movie, but it had David Arquette in this movie, and it was during the Holocaust, right? Where there's a group of these Jewish prisoners in a concentration camp, and what it was is that this particular group of prisoners were tasked with doing certain things, like they were tasked with sorting through valuables and like shaving people's like body hair off, stuff like that. And these guys would get special privileges because they did this work, right? So they would get like better food, and they would get to keep some of the valuables, that kind of thing, right? Um, and some of them would even like go so far as to like identify with the Nazi party. They would sew swastikas into their clothes, that kind of thing. Even though these guys were up for the chopping block too, and the plan all along was always to murder them once all the other people got murdered, right? But this is like, it was sort of like, this group of people who just got slightly better treatment than their contemporaries all just sort of jumped in with like the people who were literally keeping them in prison and murdering their people. Kind of reminds me of that. It reminds me of that sort of, what do they call that? There's a name for it, something syndrome, where you like identify with your oppressor. I can't remember exactly what it was called, but it's like Patty Hearst gets kidnapped and then held for ransom, and then like 3 months later, she's like become one of the fucking terrorists. What's the name for that particular syndrome? I can't remember what it is, but it reminds me a lot of that. Really, what it is, these Proud Girls, what they are, they're trad femmes. Okay, mostly. That's basically what it is. Trad femmes, traditional feminists, right? Which is, these are the feminists that think that you're only going to really be happy. Stockholm Syndrome. Thank you guys so much. Sean and Dynacat. You guys are awesome. Stockholm Syndrome, right? So what these Proud Girls, yeah, they're trad femmes, traditional feminists. The people that think that the only way a woman can really be happy is to stay home and, pump out 3 or 4 babies and not have a career and, make dinner and do the laundry and give your man a blowjob whenever he like wants one on command, right? And all of this other shit. And it's like, the thing about feminism is that it allows for this, right? The thing about feminism is if you want to be a stay-at-home wife, you can, right? Nobody cares. That's the thing, right? Nobody who's a feminist is going to go out and say, you know, don't stay at home, don't be a housewife. No, the whole idea behind feminism is if you want to do whatever you want to do, and not because some other forces in society are making you do it. But if you want to do it, then do it. So if you want to stay home, right? You want to raise kids. If you want to like be a traditional housewife, then that's what makes you happy, then fucking do it. Then everybody will support your ass. That's exactly what you want. And if you want to go out and get a career and own a business and be an astronaut or whatever the fuck, right? Or, you know, if you want to join the army, if you want to play in sports, if you want to do whatever it is you want to do, you know, that's basically what the entire point of feminism is that you should be allowed to do what you want with your life, right? Whether it's, you know, and that includes, you know, what you do with your body, right? That includes who you choose to have sex with, who you choose to not have sex with, right? Or how and what manner you go about that. You know, if you choose to have children or not have children or stay home or whatever the fuck it is, right? And so it's like, yeah, fine. Be a trad fem, you know, be a traditional feminist. No one gives a shit. You know what I mean? And it really kind of shows that the difference in mentality between conservatives and, you know, I mean, I hate using the word liberal, right? But, you know, conservatives and I guess you would say liberal or, you know, um, you know, people from the left, you know what I mean? Right? Really shows the difference because no one on the left is ever trying to force anyone to do anything. You know what I mean? Nobody who's a fucking, you know, what did you say? I think a large untold contributing factor is the medication these people are on. Yes, you're definitely true. That's definitely true there. Um, but yeah, like nobody from the left end of the political spectrum will ever try to force somebody to like, you know, especially when it comes to their like social like, you know, norms, right? So you get like lots of you know, um, leftists or whatever, right? Liberals, progressives, those people, right? And they, you know, they support things like gay rights, for example, but no one is ever going to force you to turn gay, right? For example, no one will ever try to pass a law saying you have to be gay or you have to be a lesbian or whatever. No one would ever do that shit. That kind of thing only comes from the right wing. You know, it's only the right wing that actually tries to make a law that says women have to stay home and take care of kids, right? Or something like that. Or women aren't allowed to get, you know, they're not allowed to have reproductive rights. You know, they're not allowed to get abortions when they need it for whatever fucking reason it is, right? You know, or women shouldn't vote. Stuff like that. That kind of shit always only ever comes from the right wing, you know. And it's like I don't know. But getting back to the Proud Girls here, I just think it's really funny and ridiculous that they're kind of being rejected by, you know, their own I guess you would say people who would support them. You know, the Proud Boys are kind of telling them to get lost and don't steal our fucking name or whatever. And it's like, gee, girls, you know, what did you think when you like tried to like appeal to a group whose entire existence for, you know, reason for existing is to be chauvinists? You know, what do you think? See, I guess they didn't understand that, you know, a group like the Proud Boys is diametrically opposed to feminism of all kinds, even traditional feminists. Right? So, I don't know. It just kind of blew my mind. I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I'm thinking maybe of actually like making an entire video of like talking about the Proud Girls and who they are and who's behind them, and then maybe actually showing a couple of you know, YouTube posts and things, Twitter posts showing a little bit of the fighting on the infighting going on. I just think it's awesome when these people sort of turn on their own. You know what I mean? It's great to me. I love seeing infighting on the right wing. You know what I mean? Like that gives me a little bit of hope. You know, if we can keep these people disorganized, you know, like the more disorganized and the more like they fight amongst themselves, the less they can focus on spreading their lies and bullshit and conspiracy theories. You know what I mean? And I think that's really gonna have to be one of the approaches we take. You know, it might even be worth it setting up a couple of sock accounts and pushing these people in certain, you know, nudging them along. I mean, the thing is, I know that's a thing on the right wing. I know the right wing does this all the time. You know, they pretend to be, you know, progressives or liberals or whatever, and or BLM people, stuff like that. They pretend to be, you know, people on the left, and then they post ridiculous shit over and over. In fact, I have an article right here I kept. Right, let me just pull up my phone. I have this article right here. Let me see if I can't dig this out here. About a guy who, here we go. Twitter suspends, this is from Axios. Twitter suspends fake, oh, fuck off. Twitter suspends fake Antifa account tied to white nationalists. This is on, let me just see if I can't pull that up real quick here. Let's see. Twitter suspends fake. Let's see if that pulls it up. Here we go. Let's just go to this. Let's go to the Reuters one. There we go. So that'll be less fucking ads on the Reuters one. And turn on my right monitor. Twitter suspends fake Associated Press accounts that made bogus U.S. election. Oh wait, no, that's the wrong one. Sorry. It wasn't that one. It was the white. Yeah, here we go. Posing as black Trump supporters. No, that's another. Wow, there's a lot of fake accounts here. But let's see. Fake accounts tied to white nationalists. I can spell. Give me 1 second, guys. There it is. Wow. You know what? I'm going to have to go back and explore some of those other links. But, right monitor. Twitter suspends fake Antifa account tied to white nationalists. That's the one I wanted to talk about. Because we see this happen all the time. This actually happened a little while back. This is June, you know. So basically, this particular, well, this was the tweet, but this particular article talks about how there was a guy that got caught that was spreading, you know, basically pretending to be a BLM guy who was spreading shit, you know, ridiculous things. Right, and it turned out this dude was a white nationalist. Right, I'll put the link to this down in the bottom in the chat also if you guys want to check it out. Right, but the entire point there is, yeah, we know that they do shit like this. You know, we know that insane right-wing people, Proud Boy types, white nationalists and stuff like that will go on Twitter, and this is how it works, right? They'll go on Twitter, they'll go on Facebook, they'll go on Reddit. They'll post some ridiculous things, some really just far out, you know, shit that nobody with a brain would ever think of, you know. And then they'll take that and then they'll post it on 4chan or something like that and complain about, see how insane these fucking commies are, right? Some of this stuff actually gets legs. You know, there was, after the terrorist attack in Paris a couple of years ago, there was this terrorist attack in Paris where, like, you know, a bunch of, like, you know, fucking Islamic terrorists were, like, machine gunning people and stuff like that. And there was a Twitter hashtag that went out from BLM types that was fuck Paris. Right? And, you know, shit like that, I really suspect that started as, you know, a right-wing plant. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. Sometimes this shit takes off, you know. Now, I don't have any actual proof of that, but that sounds to me like something, you know, that a right-wing insane person, a fucking white nationalist, would do in order to make BLM look bad. Sometimes people take off with it, so who knows, right? So yeah, anyway, where are we at here? 144. There was one more thing I wanted to talk about Jared Kushner and how they created a shell company in order to steal $600 million from the Trump campaign. But I think we'll only briefly touch on this. You know that this is in the news right now. Basically, the reason why I wanted to talk about that story is because 4 years ago, when I made my predictions of the Donald Trump presidency, one of those predictions was that he would get busted stealing some money, right? And my guess back then was that it was going to be um, campaign contributions. I thought back in 2017, right, that Donald Trump was going to get caught stealing campaign contributions. And yet it took 4 years, but it finally happened. So here's this other story, and we'll just very, very briefly go on and talk about this. Uh, Kushner helped create Shell Trump campaign company that secretly paid family members. Right. Long story short, basically he sets up a fake company. They use that to funnel campaign contributions for, and it turns out his wife is like president of the company, and then a lot of it was just a scheme in order to like enrich themselves, and something around $600 million they managed to squirrel away from the Trump campaign through the shell company. So I'll just put this in the chat too, so you guys can read that at your leisure. Um, just another example of how it's all a grift, and I really wanted to talk about that because that was one of my, predictions that this would actually happen. In fact, I'm gonna show you guys. Uh, I'm gonna find that so that I can prove to you guys. Right, hang on. Let me just go to my blog. I actually do have a blog. Go to blogspot.com. Hang on one second, guys. It's at blogspot.com. So I actually do have a blog here, if you guys want to see it here. This is my Why I Hate the World blog, where I like usually post links to whatever latest video I have, and then also a bunch of other shit here. Right, so, because this is, the channel started off as an actual, started off as a blog, basically. But let me find this for you guys so that I can prove to y'all that I actually, did predict this. Let me go back. It's going to have to be back in 2017. Let's see. Here it is. Predictions for a Trump presidency. Right. Left, right monitor. So these were my predictions for the Trump presidency. I actually did a video where I went through all of these and how close they were. Back, it was grading the Trump presidency. I went through all of these. And there was one here. Where is it? Let's see. Blah, blah, blah. There was one where where I said that he was going to rip off some money. Here we go. Trump will get caught somehow in a scandal with a shitload of money. My guess is that it'll be redirecting leftover campaign funds to his personal accounts. He's too fucking greedy to not take advantage of the office of president for personal gain. This is me. I wrote this on November 9th of 2016. Looks like my last prediction actually came true. What can I say, folks? Am I Nostradamus or what? I don't know. I mean, it's just logical. Logic and reason, to assuming that a greedy, person who makes a living defrauding people. That's what Donald Trump did. Donald Trump basically made a living defrauding people. It doesn't take secret psychic powers to assume that a con man was going to try to steal millions of dollars when it's right in front of them like that. I just wanted to gloat a little bit because I got that one right. So let's read some of the quotes here, or the some of the chat, because it looks like we actually had a little bit of a discussion going here. Wow. Lots of discussion. You guys are actually like chatting it up in here, man. Okay. Let me see here. Dad bod. Oh, thank you for joining, Dad bod. I came out of the hole and shook my belly in my jacket. I sweat, and that's how I lose weight. Jumping up and down and shaking pants while coins come out. He wants coffee but rolls on the floor and briefs. I think, are you talking about like Wario? Isn't there a video game where you have the Wii remote and you shake it like that and it makes coins come out of like a bad guy when Wario grabs it or something? Is that what you're talking about, Dad Bod? I don't know. Thank you for joining, Dad Bod, by the way. Appreciate that. Okay, onward to dystopia. Too many people in this country will believe anything, no matter how crazy it is, as long as it reflects their personal biases. Exactly right. You're exactly right, Onward. And the thing about this is that we have to understand that we too are subject to these biases, right? Um, it's just human nature, you know. So what you want to, the thing is you have to understand that these are weaknesses that we all have, and try to identify when you yourself are, being subject to these biases, right? I mean, I admit, all the time, I do have biases against right wing sources of information. For example, you know, I'm less likely to believe something if I see it on Fox News than if I see it on Reuters or some other APY or something like that, right? Lot less likely to believe that. I'm more likely to believe that, and the more right wing the news source is, the more likely I am to believe that it's bullshit. Like I said before, you know, in my last stream, like Ben Shapiro could come out and he could have like the cure to cancer, and I probably wouldn't believe his ass because it's Ben Shapiro. Exactly, and he could be 100% right, and I would still be skeptical. And it's like, well, because first off, because it's well earned. I think it's well earned because these are people that just lie to us constantly over and over and over. So it's just like common fucking sense not to believe them when they make extraordinary claims, right? um, but secondly, it's because this is a bias, right? There really shouldn't conceivably you should be able to take any sort of information that someone gives you, judge it on its own merits, regardless of where it comes from. Is this because they've lied in the past doesn't mean they won't lie again, right? So conceivably, that's how you'd want to do it. But this is a bias that I have. I have a bias against you know sources of information which have a history of lying to me. Right? So that's one thing. Same way that we all have these types of biases in one way or another. Whether it's you don't trust people from a certain political party, whether you don't trust a certain news source, whether it is you don't trust information from a government agency about things, because they've lied to you in the past, because they've spread misinformation in the past, or in the past their information has had a certain political bias, right? So this is all stuff you gotta keep in mind. Like another one that I have, and I'm not afraid to admit this either, is I tend to trust you know um, politicians I support, right, more. So somebody here in one of the comments here had said something like Obama says drink the water and shut up or whatever, right? Well, I have that bias, and I admit it. If a politician I support tells me something, I'm more likely to believe it than if it's a politician I don't support. And this is, I admit that I have it. So Donald Trump were to come out and say, hey, I have a vaccine for COVID-19, right? I would less likely believe him than if Barack Obama came out and said I had it. And that's the bias I have. I would not trust, for example, and I even said this, back when they first announced the vaccine was completed, way back in fucking September or whatever. I even said, I don't know how much I trust it, right? And it was because it got rushed through, and I don't trust, the FDA under the Trump administration to do effective testing. Right. Now, I have no actual logical reason to say that, right? Because, this is a vaccine that, lots of eyes are on, lots of people are on it, and you would think that, you know, and apparently it looks like there's a consensus of scientists saying that it's all true, all this other shit. And so really, I myself, I have no basis, no rational basis to have this mistrust, you know. But that was my initial reaction to it, right? Now, of course, I'm going to take it, and I'm going to take it because by the time it gets to us, right, which, most normal people aren't going to get it for a few months, and by that point, millions of people have already taken it, and we would be able to see if there's any side effects by that point, right? So that's why that I'm not afraid of it, right? But I admit this is a bias. This is a bias that I have. This is a bias, and you know what? If it was like say during the Obama years, and the exact same shit happened, and Obama came out and said, "Hey, I have this vaccine. You guys should take it," I would be more likely to trust it because it came from a source I trust. This is a bias. This is, you know, so we all have to, and I admit that I have it. I admit that I have it, and I admit that it was wrong for me to just automatically assume that the Trump FDA wouldn't do their jobs right. You know, these are things that we have to like identify in ourselves. Whether you think that's justified or not. I mean, personally, I think it is justified, but it's still a bias. You know, um, but we all have to, we all need to identify these things in order to think, this is what being a rational person is all about, you know, being able to judge, to make informed decisions and rational judgments. That's what it's all about. And one of these things is identifying these problems, these cognitive biases that we all have in ourselves. And it doesn't mean that you're not intelligent when, especially if you can identify when it's happening when you're doing it, whether it's like subconscious or what. If you can identify that you're doing it and understand that, okay, this is not the right way to think, that's a good step to identify, to thinking clearly, right? So I completely admit these are problems that I have these biases just as everybody else has them, and you just have to kind of understand when it's happening, whether they make you suspicious of things, understand when you're doing it, and that way you can counter it, I guess is what it is, right? Okay, let's see. I see there's a lot of stuff talking about when we were talking about the NSA and all that. It looks like Sean, you're kind of very informed on this stuff. you know. Let's see. What do we got here? Sean O'Nillabud, you can to some extent predict what smart people will do. The problem with Trump tards is that they are thick as shit. You can't predict them because you can't think like a fucking moron. Yeah, well, you can I don't know. I mean, the more I think I've got it all figured out, the then I see like another comment or another like video, another YouTube video or something of people just doing something completely fucking ridiculous. And then I understand it's like, no, I don't have it all figured out. So yeah, I guess it is kind of you know, I guess you just have to think like what's the dumbest fucking thing that I could possibly do, and then do something even stupider than that. And then that's probably where like, that's where your Trump person is going to be thinking about. I don't know. That's funny. Onward to dystopia. It's interesting. All these intricate conspiracy theories involving intelligence services in other countries, and they think they'll fix it by waving a flag and yelling MAGA on the street corner. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, what do you think they're gonna do? Like, this is another thing that I don't get. Like, okay, so let's say for you know example that there actually was a conspiracy between like voting machines created in Venezuela and like China and all of this shit in order to steal the election. Let's say all of this there was actually true. Like, what are they going to do about it? Like, what are they trying to say? Like, that we need violent revolution, right? I mean, that really would be the only like answer at this point. So, resist, protest. Okay, well, if you really think that your government is, you know, illegitimate, if you really think the election was stolen, then and your government is illegitimate and it's been secretly taken over by foreign actors and all of that shit, the next logical step is violence, right? There really is no in between. Like, what are you going to do? Expose it? Well, if they can do all of that shit, don't you think that they can keep it covered up? You know? Don't you think these people would be able to rig whatever? I mean, this is the problem. This is another reason why all of this shit just falls apart when you actually examine it in a rational way, right? Because in order for any of this stuff to actually be true, that means that the conspirators have to have nearly supernatural powers when it comes to influencing people, right? When it comes to rigging things, like that means they have to, by necessity, right? They have to run all of the law enforcement agencies, right? Because there has to be a reason why, like, none of them ever get arrested, right? Why the FBI never like arrests anybody, why the police never arrest anybody, why the NSA doesn't actually stop any of this, blah blah blah. They have to be in on it. That's the only explanation, right? So they have to run those guys, they have to run the politicians, they have to run the army. They all have to be like in cahoots, you know, because they're not doing anything about it. So they're either, so before you know it, it's like this cabal of imaginary people, imaginary, space lizards or whatever that's running all this shit. They've got like powers beyond, you know, I mean, they end up having supernatural abilities in order for any of this shit to actually make sense. This is what it leads to. And it just gets more and more ridiculous. Like, the more you think about it, right? The more you think about it, and the more you think about all the things that have to be true in order for these things to, like, all the things that have to happen in order for these things to be true, it just compounds. And before you know it, it's like, yeah, you're thinking about people getting brainwashed. You're before you know it, there's fucking super soldiers, and there's like, alien abductions are really like the government abducting people and planting false memories in their heads and all of this other bullshit, and it becomes I don't know. It's just it's wacky, and people believe this shit. That's the thing. People believe this shit, and it's like, I don't think that, well, really what it is they're not actually thinking about it. Nobody's actually really thinking about what it must take for this conspiracy theory to actually be true. They're not actually thinking about that shit. They're just like seeing, they're just like seeing posts on Facebook that make them feel good. It's all about that's the thing. It's all about emotion, all of this stuff, conspiracy theories, politics. It's all about emotion. What makes you feel good, right? And it feels good to read like a guy on Facebook posting some shit about how the election was stolen. That means that you didn't vote for a loser. Right? So this is what, and then they retweet it because it feels good. It feels like I'm doing something. I retweet it. I repost it. Whatever the fuck. It's all emotions here. Fuck. Let's one thing to just keep in mind. This is all just like disaffected people that have no control over their lives, trying to find something to be passionate about. So it's all very quite sad. Let's see. Moving on. It's more fun to believe all. Oh wait, here we go. Sean Nillabud. Um, Knowledge is power, ignorance is weakness. The stupid live in constant fear because they haven't a fucking clue what's going on. Yes. It's more fun to believe all this conspiracy BS than just to watch life get worse in America every year. Exactly, exactly. And it gives a sense of, also a sense of control to people, because they feel like, especially they see lots of just really bad news all the time, bad news about the economy, bad news about, you know, global warming, global fucking climate change, fires in Australia, and this year massive fires on the West Coast. I think I got lucky because there really wasn't one near my house this year. Right. Kind of every year now when there's like fires, I'm all paranoid that I'm gonna have to evacuate again. Thankfully, it hasn't happened this year, but it's only a matter of time, right? People see all of this stuff, an economic downturn, and now we have a pandemic and all of this, and they feel very powerless. And this is the thing, like, there was that one comment that I posted here where the guy said there are no coincidences. You know, that I think is very telling. That really is the mindset, the conspiracy theory mindset. There are no coincidences. Everything has a meaning. You know, and this is why it's so easy to just fold in whatever event happens in the news. Some event happens. Guy blows himself up in Nashville. That just gets folded right into the greater conspiracy because there are no coincidences. Everything means something. That means, there are no just random acts of whatever. This is like what they're trying to say, because in real life it's the exact opposite. Random acts of you know tragedy happen all the time to people. People get in car accidents all the time. People die of easily preventable diseases. People drop down and die of heart attacks. Planes fall out of the sky. Shit like this happens all the time. Earthquakes, whatever. You know, that was another thing. Like, you remember back when all the back in 2018 where there was like all those fires in California. There was another conspiracy theory going around about how it was like, the NWO testing laser weapons, right, in order to burn down forest fires in California. And then 2 years later in 2020, you get the same thing in same huge fires in Australia. Exact same conspiracy theories come back. Oh, they're testing the laser weapons in Australia now. It's like, no, it can't just be a random forest fire brought on by global climate change because, you know, big business and shit is spewing fucking hydrocarbons into the fucking air, right? And at an unchecked rate, and resulting in severe environmental damage. Can't be that. It has to be fucking laser weapons and shit because one of those things you can control. That means somebody's responsible. Somebody did it on purpose. The other one is, just due to fucking air pollution and shit from our industrialized society and our unwillingness to actually, like, take any steps to curb global fucking carbon emissions. That one is a lot more hard to nail down. You can't just blame one person for that. You know, you can blame people for laser weapons, but the other one, no, that means we might actually have to, like, enact some real solutions that take, where people are forced to take responsibility for their actions. Fuck all that shit. No. Right? Much, much easier just to blame the Jewish space lizards for shooting their lasers off and burning down the forest. Anyway, let's see. Let's move on. Here we go. Sean Nilbud. These are people who think the world is 6,000 years old, snakes can talk, and magic is real. They look in the sky and see chemtrails. Cartoon predictions are a walk in the park for them. Yes. Exactly. Exactly. You're exactly right. You should do a fucking live stream, man. You seem to got some good points there. Ah, but you're exactly right, and it's really not a big, revelation to see that most of these people that believe in conspiracy theories are also highly religious. The I guess predisposition to believe in supernatural explanations for phenomena. Kind of shows that it's like, yeah, it's not that big of a leap. It's not that big of a leap from believing in angels and demons and you know um, talking snakes and fish that swallow people for 3 days in a row and that kind of thing. And taking that, and then also that same person believes that the government is spying on you through your cell phone 24 hours a day, or you know something like that, or the election was stolen by you know a guy, a South American dictator who's been dead for 7 years. Right. Even though Hugo Chavez really wasn't a dictator. I mean, not really. Um. Anyway, moving on here. Let's see. We already talked about some of this stuff. Echelon talked about that. Onward to dystopia. Alex Jones says the technology we see around us is 30 years behind what the elite has, so you can essentially believe that they can do anything. It's a convenient escape hatch for these arguments. See, now here's an example. There is a shred of truth into that, right? But the technology that there is technology in development now, which has always been ahead by some time, and that's kind of how technology works. You have to have people developing this stuff, in order for it to actually come to fruition, right? So, for example, an example of this is in the Ronald Reagan Museum, the Ronald Reagan Library. That's actually close to where I live out here in Los Angeles, right? There's a Air Force One that the plane that he used is like actually inside the museum, right? And you can walk through it, and it's amazing how actually like tight it is in there. I don't know what the new Air Force One is, probably bigger, right? But the one that Ronald Reagan used is very, very, very narrow, and there's two computer terminals near the front of the plane, right? And they have flat screens. So keep in mind, Ronald Reagan was president from 1980 to 1988, or was it 1981 to 1988, right? So this is years in advance of before we got flat screens. We didn't get flat screens until like, you know, 15 years after this. Like you started first seeing flat screens in laptop computers, roughly in the early 90s, like right around, you had those IBM ThinkBooks, right around 94, 95 is when we first got commercial releases of flat screens, and it was another decade before you could buy a flat screen TV, you know, right? So let's say this is at least 10 years in advance of when, or I would even say maybe 15 years in advance of when these things became, you know, um, commercially available, right? And the thing is that, so I saw them, and they were these little laptops, and the screen was thick as fuck. It was like that thick, the screen, right? But, this is 1985, so this shit was like, just being developed. So it's like, yeah, okay, they had flat screens in 1985, right? They were really thick, they were monochrome, and they were things that, like, you know, they were nowhere near what we have now, number one. Number two, it only makes sense because, it takes, how long does it take for any type of technology to become cheap enough to where the normal, where you could sell it at retail and actually make a profit, you know? A long time. CD players, for example, were invented in the early 70s, right? CD technology was invented in the early 70s, but we didn't actually get CDs until what? Early 80s? About 10 years, right? Took a long time for that to actually like become, because they have to shake out all the bugs on it. They have to refine the manufacturing process, and to where it eventually becomes cheap enough that you can sell it in a commercial product. You know what I mean? And that's usually what happens. So there is an element of truth to that. But here's the thing: it's like this is something Alex Jones does all the time, right? He'll take something that has a very, very small element of truth and he'll blow it out of proportion like that. So he says, yeah, they have technology that's 30 years in advance. Not really, Technology exists that is being developed now that we may not see for 10 or even 20 years. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean that there's some like, hidden military base in the center of the earth where all of these supercomputers and shit like that are actually being used, you know. So it's sort of like, you know, like he's just melding shit together in order to like create his narrative there. I don't know. And this is a thing that conspiracy theories they always do. They always take a little nugget of truth and throw it in there. And it's because then that also allows you to, if you ever like want to look that up and you find out it's real, that makes them seem like they're more credible when in real life they're not. In real life they're just sort of like they're crafting this fantasy, you know, putting together all these little different elements and crafting a fantasy out of it that has no basis in fucking reality. All right, guys, it is almost 5, and we've been going for a good 2 hours. How has it been 2 hours? It's been at least 2 hours. I don't know. I gotta get going. I gotta feed my dogs because they're starting to scratch at my door and stuff. So, let's see. This is where we're at right now. Coming along pretty good. We got almost, I'd say about a third of the entire page done. So, I don't know how much longer we'll continue with this, but, and then maybe when we finally finish this, maybe I'll, like, make a print of it if you guys want it. Anyway, but I'm gonna go ahead and end this. So, hey, you guys are cool. Thank you so much. I see there was a lot of people joining today, man. That's kind of cool. I got thank you to Dynacat. Thank you to Booyah Amadam. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Dad Bod. That's a new guy. I haven't seen you around before. Thanks for joining, Dad Bod. Thank you, Sean Nillabud. You really seem to know what you're talking about there, Sean. You should make YouTube videos, man. Let's see what else we got here. That's me. And I think, is there anybody else who commented in here? Lewis the Hedgehog, thank you for joining. Lewis the Hedgehog, you're great too. And Dynacat, if I haven't said thank you, Dynacat loves me also. Alright guys, you're great. You guys are really cool. I think I'm going to go ahead and end the stream for today. So, but as always, before we end it, I got to go in and give you my ending thing where I show you all my different, you know, social media and whatnot. So, you know, this, I know, I keep saying that I'm just gonna, like, you know, make a, little video segment. I know, I just gotta quit being lazy and just do it. But, folks, if you like what I do and you, want to see more, you know, let me turn on my left monitor. You want to see more of what I do? This here is my, let's make that bigger. This is my webcomic. So if you like my artwork and you want to see, you know, some of my comics, it's at hawanja.com. Please come check me out. If you want to see more of my artwork, please check me out on DeviantArt/Hawanja. I have more artwork here, and I have sculptures and shit like that, stuff like this, you know. So please come check me out if you want to see more of my artwork there. If you want to support the channel, I have an SD shop here. I'll put links to all this stuff in the chat after the video goes live. And these are prints and things that I sell, so if you like what you see and you like what I do and you want to support the channel, please consider buying something. This is a Lovecraft character here. These are all 11 by 17 prints. Each one is hand stained. They all come out unique. You know, here's another one. This is my own creation here. This particular demon monster thing. I came up with that. So anyway, and then I also have a non-political channel called UCD Videos where I talk about video games and I unbox toys and I talk about TV shows and movies and crap like that. So if you want to see me talk about toys and games and non-political content, please check me out on UCD Videos. Anyway, folks, I think that's pretty much it for me. So I'm going to go ahead and end this. You guys all have a happy new year. Stay safe. And that's all I got. Adios, folks.